Greetings, this is Amy Wentley with Chai Knuckles Knitting, and this is episode 2020-23, Orime Side Seams, Side to Side Seam. So this is one in a series of videos on finishing the Orime sweater. We've done 4 videos so far, one on shoulder seaming, one on the collar extension seam, one that combines the collar extension to outside back seam and the folded collar extension to inside back seam, overlapped bottom collar seam for the Kitchener stitch, and now we're at side seams. This is a side to side seam. And then we'll have one more video in the series after this, armhole finishing applied I-cord. So the side seams involve the front and the back of the garment. So it is these side seams. This picture is a little misleading because you actually knit only a certain amount up until you reach where the armholes will be. Okay, so the instructions in the pattern say at this point, taking 1.5 stitches each side for a selvage, sew side seam for anywhere between 10.5 or 11.5 inches, depending on your size, from cast on edge upward, leaving remainder open for the armhole. So this is a photo. I think you can see it. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be sewing together the ladders between the stitches at the edge of our swatches. So let me show you what the swatch looks like and what your sweater will look like. Remember when you were working the fronts and the back in the sweaters, you were always maintaining a 2-stitch border on the edges. So we have these here. They would come together. So this, let's say this would be my front and this would be the back. And we maintain these 2 stitches on the edges. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to sew together between half of this column of stitches and half of this column of stitches, so that when we bring everything together, we're going to have 1 column of knit stitches up our side seam. And let me show you what that looks like on the real sweater. Here it is. So this is a side seam. And what we end up with is a very nice row of a knit stitch up the side of the sweater after we do this seam. There are a couple of blips where the arrows come together, but all told it's one nice row of knitting up the edge. And that's achieved by coming 1.5 stitches in from the inside. So these are my 2 edge stitches. Let me do it right side up. The 1 edge stitch is a wonky stitch. It's your wonky edge stitch, but that's a whole stitch there at the edge. And then this is a whole stitch that goes up the middle. And we are going to be going after the ladders between these 2 to sew things together. Okay? So let me just show you another picture of this, just maybe so you can see it a little bit bigger. And I stretched these stitches for you, but this is the edge stitch, this is the edge stitch. And when we bring them together, these 2 edges are going to come together and look like 1 knit stitch up the middle. What we're going to be doing is, I want to show you this, this graphic first, okay? And then we'll go into real life. But what you're going to be doing at the bottom, you're going to be starting with a figure 8 knot, and I'll show you how to do that. And once you have the figure 8 knot, you're going to end here, and you're going to come over the left side, and you're going to scoop up under a ladder on the left side, then come over to the right side and scoop up under the corresponding ladder on the right side, and then go back and the next ladder on the left side, and then the next ladder on the right side. And you will keep doing this back and forth, picking up those ladders as we go. So let's just jump right in. You are going to need Since you're doing a side seam and it's a very long seam, the seam is going to be anywhere from 10 to 12 inches. You really are not going to be wanting to work with a seaming piece of yarn. Like twice that would be, we're talking about maybe a yard's worth of yarn, and that's a lot to work with to seam. So just pick a piece of yarn the size that you're comfortable sewing with. Once we get to the point where that runs out, we can add a new piece for our seam. Okay, so I have a different color here just so you can see it better. You'll be using your working yarn. And we're going to start with a figure-8 knot. And the way we do that is we start at the bottom left of our right side piece here. And you're going to have right sides facing, and you're going to have the borders butted up against each other. The bottom's here, the top's here. Okay. So you're going to come up from under the cast on edge on the right piece. Excuse me. And you're going to leave a tail. And then you're going to come up under the cast on edge of the left piece. And you do not have to pull this tight yet. Not until you get the whole figure-8 knot done, which is coming up on the right side from underneath in the exact same place you did before. And you're going to pull this tight now. Okay, that is your figure-8 knot, and it starts your seam. It's a great way to start seams for lots of different seams. Okay, so we last came up over on this right hand side. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go over to this left hand side, this column of stitches, and we're going to, you can spread these apart with your fingers, don't be bashful, and we're going to come up under the first ladder here. That's the ladder between the two sides of this column of stitches. And we're going to pull the yarn through. And you don't have to pull this tight yet. Okay. Then we're going to come over to the right side piece. And we're going to find the corresponding ladder between the two legs of this column of stitches. And we're going to pull our yarn through. And then we're going to go back over to the left. So you see where your yarn came out here before on the left. You'll go back down into that same spot and you'll come up, grab that ladder. Then you're going to come back over to the right side and come right back down to where you came up before and grab the next ladder. When you're doing a side-to-side seam like this, you are joining every stitch. You're not going to skip stitches. Excuse me again. You're just going to do every stitch. So back over to the left side where I came out, I'm going to go grab the next ladder and pull through. Go back over to the right, come down where I came up, next ladder. Okay, so after I do about 5 of these, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my yarn tight. And watch what happens. The seam's magically going to happen. You pull your yarn tight. There you go. And there you go. You have a seam done. And see how you now have just a knit row up. Okay. So let's imagine at this point that I feel like I want to change yarn because let's say I'm about to run out of this. And so I just came out on the left side and I'm going to want to find where I want to do the ladder on the right side. And what you want to do is just put your needle through and pull the yarn through and let the yarn, the working yarn, hang at the back. You can weave this in later. So you'll get a new piece of yarn. You'll thread your needle. And I want you to put your needle back down where you drop this last yarn to the back, that same stitch, and grab that ladder, the next ladder. Or no, actually, yes, no, you won't do that. Sorry. Please ignore that. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to come up from the bottom because you're going to want to leave a tail hanging that you can weave in. So where you're going to come up is you went down into the stitch and left your tail hanging with the last piece of yarn. So you're going to want your yarn to come up on the other side of that ladder. So your needle's going to come up on the other side of that ladder. And you'll pull until you have a tail that you can weave in later, and then you'll come over to the left side and do the next ladder. And then come over to the right side and do the next ladder. And continue all the way up. When you get to the end, you can end it with a figure 8 knot and you'll be good to go. Now, one thing you might want to do before you even start your seam that could be helpful for you is you can count stitches and you can put markers on both sides. Let's say I would start with my right side and I would count 10 stitches or 10 rows up, and I could put a marker here on one side, and then I would count 10 stitches up on the left side and put another marker when I get 10 stitches up to the left side. Let's say that's here. And I could just mark all the way up until those 10.5 inches or 11 inches that I need to go to the armhole. And then whenever I came to these markers, I would know I would want them to be very close to each other when I'm doing the seaming. If I'm seeing that my markers are here, maybe my seaming got off a little bit. So you want to make sure that you're seaming the same amount on both sides and that you don't have a crooked hem. And that's a way to help you do that. And so that is all that I have for you for this video. There's one more video left in the series, and that's going to be about how to finish off the armhole. And I will see you then. Thank you.